Good evening, and welcome back to the Psychedelic Cafe. This is part 3 of the series When Heidegger Met Castaneda, the Psychedelic Odd Couple. The name of this talk is The One-Way Bridge. So I want to spend a little time going into what Heidegger actually had to say. And when I reference page numbers from excerpts of Being and Time, they are the Macquarie and Robinson page numbers, not the German edition page numbers, which also are included in this book. So on the very first page of the text proper, page 19, Heidegger leads off with a quote from Plato. Heidegger has enormous respect for the Greeks, specifically Plato and Aristotle, but he believes in a couple of key respects that they pointed Western thinking in the wrong direction, and that we've been going in the wrong direction ever since. I put it this way. Plato got us on the bus, and Heidegger offers us a way off the bus, or at least makes us clear about where the exit door is. Now, Heidegger has been criticized as blaming Plato entirely for the wrong direction in our thinking, and I don't believe that's what he's really saying. However, Plato is the touchstone that Heidegger uses historically to mark the turn of thinking that he wants us to be aware of. So here's the quote. This is Plato. For manifestly, you have been long aware of what you mean when you use the expression being. We, however, who used to think we understood it, have now become perplexed. Now here's Heidegger. Do we in our time have an answer to the question of what we really mean by the word being? Not at all. So it is fitting that we should raise anew the question of the meaning of being. But are we nowadays even perplexed at our inability to understand the expression being? Not at all. So first we must reawaken an understanding for the meaning of this question. Our aim in the following treatise is to work out the question of the meaning of being and to do so concretely. And he continues on page 21. The necessity for explicitly restating the question of being. This question has today been forgotten. Even though in our time we deem it progressive to give our approval to metaphysics again, it is held that we have been exempted from the exertions of a newly rekindled struggle for the nature of the self. Yet the question we are touching upon is not just any question. It is one which provided a stimulus for the researches of Plato and Aristotle only to subside from then on as a theme for actual investigation. What these two men achieved was to persist through many alterations and retouching down to the logic of Hegel. And what they rested with utmost intellectual effort from the phenomena, fragmentary and incipient as it was, has long since become trivialized. Not only that, on the basis of the Greeks' initial contributions towards an interpretation of being, a dogma has been developed, which not only declares the question about the meaning of being to be superfluous, but sanctions its complete neglect. And let me comment here. Heidegger does disagree with Plato and Aristotle on some basic issues, namely Plato's idealization and conceptualization of being, and Aristotle's reductionistic description being in terms of substance, that is, reducing Dasein to a substance. But beyond that is Heidegger's contention that we've been living with a dogma made from the work of Plato and Aristotle that has largely eliminated the question that the Greeks were genuinely willing to wrestle with. And let's continue with the rest of the quote from page 21. This is Heidegger quote. It is said that being is the most universal and the emptiest of concepts. As such, it resists every attempt at definition. Nor does this most universal and hence indefinable concept require any definition, for everyone uses it constantly and already understands what he means by it. In this way, that which the ancient philosophers found continually disturbing as something obscure and hidden has taken on a clarity and self-evidence such that if anyone continues to ask about it, he is charged with an error of method. We see this played out today. There are neurophysiologists who are attempting to reduce any moment of consciousness to a specific snapshot of brain chemistry. There are material scientists who claim that we're not really conscious. It's just an epiphenomenon of matter. We only think that we're conscious, but it's just an illusion, a kind of material echo. But these models only beg the question. There's a little book written by Thomas Nagel called Mind and Cosmos, where he makes the case that if you look at human behavior or Dasein, you cannot account for it through Darwinian material processes. We do all kinds of things that do not necessarily follow from the idea of fitness for reproduction. Nagel famously proposed the question, what is it like to be a bat? And a really basic idea in Heidegger is that it is like something to be us, that we are not simply another Aristotelian substance, and that material science cannot account for our awareness of being. And remember, Heidegger will say many times that we are the kind of beings for whom being is an issue. The way I put this is that science cannot account for how we get from a hot cloud of hydrogen in the Big Bang to Mozart. It does not follow from any mechanical or deterministic process. So let's talk for a moment about Plato's word perplexity, which incidentally is a synonym for mystify. Now, a principle of Zen Buddhism is that the highest state of an earthly being is to achieve the state of not knowing. So one of Heidegger's goals here is to restore us to an open mind regarding the perplexity of being. And so I'm going to throw in an important piece of Castaneda here. One of the basic principles, and the first principles that Don Juan presents to Carlos and repeats many times, is where he says, the world is a mystery and we are mysterious beings. And he means it. Now, about Heidegger and mysticism. I believe Heidegger was a mystic of a kind. I'm not making the hard case that Heidegger is proposing an elaborated, esoteric system designed to give you cosmic answers. And think for a minute who Heidegger was. He's trying to advance an academic career in Germany in the 1920s. The last thing he's going to do is talk about the strange and otherworldly, even if he ever actually thought such things. It would have been a very bad career move. I got a feel for his mysticism by reading between the lines. It's like a paint-by-numbers painting where he colors in every panel but the last, leaving you, the reader, to fill it in. So, one foundational piece of Heidegger's mysticism is that although he does not explicitly lay out an esoteric system, he does not disallow such things in any way. And this is because Heidegger's gold standard for reality is not based in reason. It is based in the phenomenal. So if something has a presence as a phenomenon, even if it's unreasonable, it's admissible. His thinking is open-ended. This is the mechanism through which the psychedelic experience can receive philosophical validity, based on the fact that it is an observable phenomenon, independent of the content of the psychedelic experience. In contrast, Don Juan was a Yaqui Indian, and he did not suffer from the constraints of being a German academic and a Catholic. He could freely talk about alternate realities and strange entities without repercussion. So I want to set up a basic metaphor regarding Heidegger and Castaneda, and it goes like this. Don Juan is the book of the night, and Heidegger is the book of the day. And remember in the previous quote where Heidegger says, our aim in the following treatise is to work out the question of the meaning of being and to do so concretely. So although Heidegger will use language familiar to Western philosophical understanding and is careful not to stray from acceptable academics and into actual mysticism, I contend that there is a complementarity between Heidegger and Castaneda, that one implies the other. and that they flow into one another at a very deep level. Let's start to wrap this talk up with more about the complementarity relationship between Heidegger and Castaneda. And I'm going to read a short passage out of the last book in the Castaneda series that I deal with, called Power of Silence. It's from the chapter called The Two One-Way Bridges. And I think it points to the bridge that can be built between these two thinkers. It recounts a conversation between Don Juan and his teacher, Elias. Elias is talking about what he called silent knowledge. He said that mankind resided in silent knowledge for ages before it moved into the age of reason, the ascendancy of reason, the linear and rational place we of the West find ourselves in today. So here's the quote. Elias assured Don Juan that only a human being who was a paragon of reason could move his awareness easily and be a paragon of silent knowledge. He said that only those who were squarely in either position could see the other position clearly, and that had been the way the age of reason came into being. The position of reason was clearly seen from the position of silent knowledge. The old teacher told Don Juan that the one-way bridge from silent knowledge to reason was called concern. That is, the concern that true men of silent knowledge had about the source of what they knew. And the other one-way bridge from reason to silent knowledge was called pure understanding. That is, the recognition that told the man of reason that reason was only one island in an endless sea of islands. So, I believe that Heidegger is that man of pure understanding that Juan describes as being squarely on the position of reason. Being and time will help you to see your bubble of perception as a bubble. That indeed we are living on an island of reason, and with that pure understanding, it becomes clear that our island of reason is indeed an island, that it is not everything. Western philosophy goes to great pains to make the case that there can be nothing outside of reason, that there is no other way in which to encounter the world. If you propose the idea that there may be an alternate way to encounter the world besides reason, you are instantly told that you are invoking chaos. But reason and chaos is not a true pair. And this is a deeper subject for later, however. I want to close with a quote from philosopher and mathematician Alfred North Whitehead. I got this from Terence McKenna, who used to bring this up from time to time, and it always stuck with me. Whitehead said that understanding is the apperception of pattern as such. Let me read that again. Whitehead said that understanding is the apperception of pattern as such. I finally looked up the word apperception, and it's interesting. It seems to first show up in the writing of René Descartes, and its definition goes something like this. The general process or particular act of mental assimilation of new experience into the totality of one's past experience. In psychedelic work, this is what I call having something come off the wallpaper. It's like a situation where you're viewing a scene that contains a camouflaged animal that you don't see until it moves. And all of a sudden it pops out of the wallpaper, and then you can see it. But before it moved, it did not exist at all. So this is what Heidegger's Being and Time does. It initiates a process of the apperception of our bubble of perception, our island of reason. We can begin to apperceive the everyday patterns of life as such. And Heidegger was not just a writer. He was an active teacher and lecturer, very well received by his students, I have heard. And I believe his intention was to teach us something beyond academic philosophy. I believe the bubble of perception is at the core of Heidegger's teaching in the same way it is at the core of what Juan was teaching Carlos. I believe Heidegger was Juan's man of pure understanding, and he begins to teach us with a deep clarity and appreciation of exactly where our starting point is. And this is where he begins to build the one-way bridge out of the cul-de-sac of Western rationalism. And he does so in a language we can culturally understand. Thank you. I hope you come back.